There we go. Thank you all very much, and welcome to FTI. I'm Charles Palmer. I run our Tech Media and Telecoms team at FTI. I'm also a parent and a former Radleyan, so it's great to see so many of you here. And it was nice talking to some of the boys earlier. So welcome, and I hope you all find this very enjoyable and very informative. I actually think this is probably one of the most interesting and one of the most exciting topics that we could possibly be talking about. This is your future. It's not only your future, literally, it's your future jobs. I think this is really one of the most interesting areas we could possibly be talking about. I think the energy transition and the way that the technologists who you've and others who got talking to you later will be able to go through. This is how we manage the transition to a net zero world, which is going to be so important to all of us. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Vincent, who's going to moderate for this evening. Have a good evening, yes, enjoy.
Thank you. Thanks, Charlie. And good evening, everybody. My name is Vincent Neate. I'm an ex-Radley parent. I always stand up here feeling slightly a little bit of a fraud because I'm only a Radley parent. And secondly, I'd like to point out that I'm also now a mathematics teacher. So I've given up the world of business and gone back to the classroom. Afterwards, if anybody would like to, I will advocate for taking a second career as a teacher. It is the best decision I think I've ever made. Anyway, enough of that. That's all about me. I did do this once before, and I think of it as a small repayment for the fact that I have two sons who are absolutely marvellous, which has got absolutely nothing to do with me and a lot to do with Radley. We've got 6 excellent speakers, and they are almost certainly, some of them, excellent because of what Radley produces. Let's run through very quickly who they're going to be and some of the rules of the game. So the basic rule is this: they're allowed 5 minutes. They have no PowerPoint slides, so you're going to really hear exactly what the horse is going to neigh, straight from the horse's mouth. They are all really experts in their field. And then what we're going to do is we're going to break up, and you will have the opportunity to ask them questions in little round tables. So we're going to have 6 tables, and we'll move around, and people will be able to actually ask them in much more intimate conversations. We'll be able to ask questions of the 6 speakers. So we won't be taking questions while they're talking. So please make sure you take a note, make sure you remember what it is that you want to ask them. Introducing them in no particular order, and not in the order necessarily that they will speak. We have Ben Hansen, who is from BP. I'm very interested to hear what he's going to say, because for a long time I've wondered why we don't see more hydrogen as a power. We have Julian Pertwee, the founding director of Footprint Zero. We have James Basden, the founder of Zenobē. We have George Gray-Cheape, who's the founder at Dalcour, Maclaren. And we have Rory Scott-Russell, head of venture capital at East Alpha. And last but not least, of course, Will Stinton, who is chief of staff at Protium Green Solutions. I will keep time. The only reason that I will allow any of them to go over their allotted 5 minutes will be if they turn out to be amusing or hilariously funny. One of them has told me that he is hilariously funny. So at the end, it's up to you to guess which one it was who said they were, and there will definitely be a prize for whoever it is who can identify the participant who decided that they were very, very funny, or who was very funny. Okay, so the first 5 minutes, according to my watch, is going to start in about 10 seconds' time. So I'm going to invite Julian to come up as our first speaker. And I think if you go to that one works just as well.
Brilliant. We start?
3, 2, 1.
Okay.
Go.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Julian Pertwee, and I've been in the solar industry for 13 years. There's not many of us with grey hair in solar. Primarily as a solar developer. In my career, I've worked on around 500 megawatts of solar on land and roofs. For those of you who don't know what that means, it roughly equates to electricity for 150,000 average UK households. 3 years ago, I founded Footprint Zero with another old Radleyan, Rupert Harrow, a company specifically focusing on solar for commercial roofs. Did you know that in 1 hour, the Earth's atmosphere receives enough sunlight to power the electricity needs of every human being on Earth for a year? This untapped resource has so much potential. In the UK, there are 250,000 hectares of south-facing commercial roofs. If we installed solar on all of them, this would deliver the whole of the UK's energy requirement. So far, the UK has installed less than 10% on these roofs. And with the increased efficiency of solar, we could do it not only on the south-facing roofs, but also on east, west, and potentially north. Our aim is to help organisations improve their mission to net zero. We do this by trying to turn a commercial roof into a sustainable energy source, improving the building's green rating and delivering an income stream. For organisations with multiple opportunities, including distribution warehouses, car parks, etc., this can be highly beneficial to their bottom line. In our business model, we have two options. We either act as architects, helping to design the solar system and run it, or we own the system, offering landlord or tenant cheaper electricity. To achieve this, our team is made up of a variety of different skill sets, ranging from RICS experts to electrical engineers, financiers to salesmen. We need a multitude of skills to get each project off the ground, from business case through planning to monitoring and building during construction and beyond. We're now working with some of the biggest landlords and tenants in the UK, helping them meet their ESG targets and saving money, including at the moment one of the biggest buildings in the UK, which is 18 football pitches big. The barriers to expansion are threefold. Lack of grid availability. The UK distribution system is not designed for localised energy production, which makes it difficult to distribute energy from fragmented sources. We overcome this in the short term with the use of smart meters, batteries and parallel ring mains, but ultimately we need to upgrade the UK infrastructure to suit localised energy production. The full insuring and repairing lease is another big barrier. Landlords and tenants are worried that putting solar on their roof will affect their warranties or the value of the building. This is not the case now, and a solar system is likely to increase the value of the building because it increases the EPC rating and rentability. And thirdly, the lack of urgency. Due to new international regulations and targets, businesses have pressure from shareholders and sustainability teams. When I started, if there was a sustainability officer, he would be down by the photocopier on the basement floor. Now, the sustainability representation is with a director at the boardroom table, which brings me on to careers. Today I looked at the Indeed website, and there are currently 678 jobs under the reference Solar Jobs London. And these range from installers, sales managers, engineers, project managers, data analysts, and so on. Likewise, there's a huge salary spread in these roles. This industry has something for everyone. There is no doubt that solar is growing at pace. This year alone, Footprint Zero is anticipating a 10-fold increase in turnover. The one thing about being in renewables is that you feel like you're in an industry that you're doing a good thing for the world at large and future generations. And finally, a man with a vision, Thomas Edison, 1931, speaking to Henry Ford and Harvey Firestone. I'd put my money on the sun and solar energy. What a source of power. I hope we don't have to wait until oil and coal run out before we tackle that. What a visionary he was. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. And I thought I was slow on the uptake. Okay, so next over up to is George, please.
Good evening. I'm not the comedian, by the way, and Also, probably the fraud as well. I'm only an OR parent, but also having looked at the companies and the roles that so many of you here are doing, it's quite incredible, it's quite astounding, the representation from all of the technologies. And I'd recommend that all of you do get to network well, and I look forward to speaking to you later on. But my small part in this massive challenge is that I founded, and I'm currently a director at Dalcour Maclaren. It was set up 20 years ago by 3 of us, and we'd been working at a national firm of chartered surveyors. So our business was established entirely to focus on advising the water, gas, electric and telecom sectors on land and property matters. Land is a finite resource. We cannot create more, yet we have ever-increasing needs and uses for it. Pressures from huge residential developments, rural diversification, or environmental mitigation, such as tree planting, and of course the need to keep on farming and producing food production. Which is more important, food security, biodiversity, or energy security? Can we get the balance right? In aiming for this balance, how will we impact people and communities with the new high voltage overhead electric lines? The large new solar farms, the gas peaking plants, or massive converter stations? And this is often overlooked whilst we consider and focus on the macro challenges of our country's energy and resource needs. And this is where Dalcour Maclaren fits in. In short, we find the sites, we plan the feasibility of linear routes, we then acquire the sites or the rights, we liaise with key stakeholders and obtain the consents. We then go on to negotiate, compensate, and thereafter support in the network maintenance. Roll forward to today, we now have a brilliant Dalcour Maclaren team, which is 450 people strong, delivering services from 14 offices across the UK and more recently in Dublin. Our services have also expanded to include consultants across the environmental, archaeology, planning, GIS, data and software. So how are we tackling the energy challenge? We're now supporting most of the UK's offshore wind projects and also across solar, nuclear, interconnectors and hydrogen projects, while still representing the district network operators and National Grid. So regardless of how energy is being generated, there are 2 common challenges. The first is land, and the second is the dreaded grid connection. Where is the nearest high voltage line, and more importantly, does it have the capacity to take the amounts of power being generated? National Grid have published how they intend to reconfigure the grid. From distributing out from the big centralised power stations to managing the unpredictability of wind and solar, now needing to be supported by nuclear and interconnectors. So the holistic network design, as they call it, explains how they intend to build new lines and upgrade existing, and also bring power south from Scotland's wind and hydro plants through multiple offshore cables. We anticipate and hope to be involved in these projects. So the biggest barriers that we face, probably one of the biggest ones, is the changing government policy. This brought some of our major projects to a grinding halt, which can be highly frustrating. Changes in policy, especially in the nuclear arena and across the devolved governments, are impacting this country's ability to hit its net zero target. More day-to-day, within our business, the other key challenge is finding the excellent people to support this national challenge. There are quite simply not enough surveyors experienced in infrastructure, so efficiency and innovation across our tech and training and developing the next generation in our academy is critical for us mitigating this challenge. And finally, the career opportunities. They are immense and very exciting. We are in the energy revolution right now, and if you're seeking opportunities, I would suggest that you can take a broader perspective because these people driving the technologies need a wide variety of services and skills. So thank you, and I look forward to speaking to you all later.
They know where they're they don't need me anymore.
I know. Hello. Good evening, everybody. My name's James Basden, and I was at Radley from 1980, actually. I was a couple of years after Jules. And so how did I get to be on this stage? Well, I left Radley. I read English literature at Durham. It doesn't take you very far, so I ended up doing advertising for 3 years. And then went to London Business School and to Kellogg in North America to do an MBA, and did 4 years of strategy consulting before deciding I was going to go and do my own thing, with all honesty, with not a lot of idea as to what that thing would be. And over a story I can tell you over a beer, I ended up running Lotus, which is a sports car and engineering group down in Norfolk, and took that through a turnaround. And through that, met a couple of individuals that I set up a consulting and private equity business in 1999 called Corvin. And we focused really on oil, gas and utilities. And I spent about 15 years working with all the UK's major utilities and power companies on their strategy and their M&A. I did National Grid's corporate strategy and M&A for 15 years, for example. And then we sold that business to a company called Oliver Wyman in 2013 and took about 125 people across. But on the private equity side, apart from a couple of businesses that were quite fun, we had 2 solar parks, and we put the very first batteries in the UK onto those solar parks. And so I started to learn a little bit about batteries. And so in 2017, myself and 2 others, we set up Zenobē. Really with a mission about how to make clean power available today, and really focused on the 2 most polluting sectors, which are transport and power. And so today, Zenobē does 2 key things. The first is about accelerating the uptake of renewable power onto power grid systems. You'll be aware that renewable power has lots of problems with intermittency and similar. So we are the first in the world to have contracts to sort out all the problems with renewable power. So we do, for those of you who are technically minded, we sort the frequency, we do reserve power, but we also solve problems with inertia, short circuit level, reactive power, which is all about voltage. And these battery storage systems are big. They are sort of 300 to 400 megawatts. That is sort of somewhere between 12 and 15 rugby pitches, and connected up onto the transmission network. And in Scotland, for example, we're putting 3 systems on at the moment. We'll have about 3 gigawatt hours worth of batteries live and operational by 2026. And that's the equivalent of taking all the cars off the road in Glasgow, Edinburgh and Aberdeen permanently in terms of emissions. So the second thing we do is about improving air quality in towns and cities. And we do that by removing the most polluting vehicles, which at the moment are diesel buses. Because they run the same route day in and day out. And we are the largest owner and operator of electric bus fleets in the UK and in Australia and in New Zealand, and we're on both sides of the business. We're currently going into the States. So in 5 years, we've raised £535 million into the company. We started with friends and family, which was a real sweat. I still haven't got them out yet, but we're working on that right at the moment. And we started from 3 of us working in Paddington Station, and there are 220 or so of us at the moment. So what's the biggest barrier? The biggest barrier at the moment is all about mindsets and behaviours. I don't know if you're aware, but it's only about 2% of global GDP that is required to do the energy transition for us to achieve a zero carbon system. We spent about 14% of global GDP on addressing the COVID situation. So this is not impossible. A lot of it is about people doing things at a relatively small level. All of us in this room are interested in this topic, and we all should take personal accountability for leading on it. But this is very doable, and I think that's one of the messages that really needs to get across. And actually, to what George said, government policy is one day this, one day that. You know, we're really pro, you know, green energy, and then we're going to put 20 billion into carbon capture and storage and so on. Madness. There are huge career opportunities for people, and for those of you who are still at Radley now and those at university and so on, I would really advocate you looking at this sector. It's going to grow enormously. We currently own and operate 1,000 electric buses. That's more electric buses than exist in the whole of North America, but we have electrified about 3% of the UK's bus fleet. So we are looking at the moment for people with data science, software writing, corporate finance, legal skills. Every part of the economy is impacted by what we are all collectively doing here. So lots of opportunities, and we're recruiting, so do come and talk to me. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that statistic about GDP. I am definitely taking that one away with me. That was very helpful. Fabulous. Now we're moving on to Rory, please.
Thanks very much. I don't think I'm the funny one either. I left Radley 25 years ago, which is surprising. I left Radley and I studied AI and computer science. Probably not many people leaving Radley in 1997 went on to study AI, but I did, and I graduated in 2002, which was the first sort of dot-com bust. So my timing was terrible. I'd always wanted to work in technology, but I ended up working in joining Shell's graduate program in London first. I did a bit of time in London, then I moved to The Hague, where I worked in planning and strategy. Then I was lucky enough to become the finance manager for exploration in Russia. I worked in Moscow and London. And after that, I became finance manager for the exploration group in Europe. After 10 years at Shell, I thought it might be time to try something else. So I did something rather, well, in hindsight, which is an interesting move. I became CEO of a very small AIM and ASX listed oil and gas company, which I did for about a year. Probably the worst year of my life. And if anyone's interested in working in small cap oil and gas, come and see me later. So after a bit of a miserable year doing that, I decided I really wanted to go back to technology and to be an entrepreneur. So I founded 4 companies since then in the past 10 years. Sorry, 4 companies. I must forget which of the 4 I've done. I worked in a company that tried to use AI and machine learning for mineral exploration in seismic workflows, which didn't work very well, but we failed fast. The other thing I did was I worked in a mobile gaming company. We founded a games company that worked with TV companies, Sony, Fremantle, and ITV, making mobile games for TV shows. We made Love Island the game, which was a pretty big hit, and we did quite well out of that. I was CEO of an exploration company based in the Caribbean with property in Honduras and Central America. I started a company looking at seabed geophysical surveys mainly for offshore wind. And that company is how I ended up in venture capital. While I was out fundraising for that, I came across a company called East Alpha, which is a commodities hedge fund. They agreed to fund that project, but were interested in funding maybe 20 or 30 projects like that. So I agreed to work with them and help look at venture capital strategy to add to their hedge fund strategies. That was about 2 years ago. East Alpha, who I work for, is a large commodities hedge fund. It trades in futures markets across the world, across commodities from energy, agriculturals, metals. It's a highly systematic, maths-based, automated fund. So multi-billion under management, but pretty much all automated. Because of that, we have kind of an interesting view of commodity markets, of energy markets, of metals, of lithium, of nickel. We think we might understand a coming hydrogen market, for example. It gives us a very interesting lens on how to look at technology and how to look at how technology could help unlock some of the bottlenecks that we think may be coming in minerals, in power, and in energy in general. The other thing that we have is a group of very smart people. So we have particle physicists, and we have geneticists, and we have computer scientists, we have mathematicians, and we have artificial intelligence experts, which I am very lucky to be able to draw on when we go and look at technology companies to invest in. The kind of companies that we invest in, so we typically invest in this so-called Series A, so just when a company might be starting to get some kind of commercial traction. We invest in the energy transition broadly. For us, that means companies that are working in energy efficiency, circular economy, and waste. The second thing that we look at is electrification, so the electrification of how we use energy. You might not know, but today, about 85% of the primary energy supplied is still fossil fuels, which has grown from 60% in 2000. We think that has to change, and electrification will be a large part of the energy system, the energy transition, which leads to a lot of opportunities. So my co-speakers are all looking at electrification and hydrogen. The other thing we look at is robust supply chains and efficient markets. So technologies that enables supply chains and efficient markets, robustness, efficiency, getting more bang for your buck from the energy system. What we really also look for is transformational technologies in huge markets. Transformational technologies for us, well, there are 4 that we're really interested in. The first one is in advanced automation, AI. The second area that we look at is biomanufacturing. So we've invested in companies, you might have heard of lab-grown meats, for example, alternative proteins using DNA or mRNA technology to grow animal cells in labs or in factories or outside of animals, basically, to eventually replace not all meat, but some meat in supply chains. The third area is advanced nuclear. Really, we look at fission technologies, but primarily we look at nuclear fusion. So we've invested in several fusion system companies in the UK and internationally. The fourth area is space and communications. So we think of a coming incredible revolution in cheap space and what that means for energy and supply chains. What does it mean when there's ubiquitous, almost free communication and centimetre real-time visuals of the planet? What does that mean for agriculture? What does it mean for supply chains? What does it mean for shipping? That's coming, as we think of all the other technologies that we're investing in. I'm not sure how I'm doing for time.
How's it doing for time?
Not very well.
All right, okay. Well, I'll leave it at that, just to say that energy has taken me from, I've got a list here, I won't be long, but I've worked in projects from the North Sea to the far east of Russia. I've worked in the Caspian, Turkmenistan, the Caribbean, Central America, Somalia, Texas, Canada, Albania, Greenland, Nigeria, Georgia, Italy, Germany, the Netherlands. I've met with presidents one day and led morning prayers with roughnecks and roustabouts the next. I've got to understand chemistry, biology, physics, geology, some of the most advanced engineering projects in the world, while working on complex multi-party contracts. Basically, in energy, you get to understand how the world really works. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Rory.
Good evening, and thank you, Ben, for covering some of the basics on green hydrogen. So it's always good to start with some statistics, and I think quite a shocking statistic is that of all energy usage today, in the last 120 years, we've only managed to electrify 25% of it. And so what we're saying by 2050, if you believe in those targets, is that we need to electrify the next 75%. That's going to cost about $5 trillion a year, a vast amount of money. And actually, the demand for electrification is only going to increase by 2050 threefold. So I think it's widely understood when you look at wind, solar and hydroelectric power today that to actually electrify all of that, we can only achieve about 25% of that. So what's the unlock? The big strategic unlock is storage technologies. And I think, well, they are critical, but there are two front runners at the moment that are really credible. Lithium-ion batteries and green hydrogen. Both have their merits, both have their weaknesses. Hydrogen, for example, is described as the Swiss Army knife of energy. We all know that the Swiss Army knife is crap. But together, okay, both are modelled to enable a further 45% electrification. So that plus wind, plus solar, around 70%. And that is materials. So we've really got to bet and invest in these types of industries. And so green hydrogen in all its forms is a critical technology alongside loads of other solutions that we've heard from today into solving this kind of multi-dimensional problem. So that's where my company comes in, Protium, or Protium Green Solutions. We design, build, own, and operate distributed energy assets, so energy assets away from the grid. And we partner with key clients, like one of ours is Budweiser, the biggest, or AB InBev, the biggest brewer in the world, to decarbonise their operations on site, kind of removing their scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions, and we can cover those in more detail if we're unsure. And we do this by producing green hydrogen on site for the decarbonisation of industrial heat. So today that's natural gas, it's other things, oil, but natural gas mainly, but also transport and heavy goods transport, so think diesel. And by doing this, we also solve other problems for our clients around energy security, energy supply, and other issues such as constrained grids. We've already touched on that today, the lack of capacity in grid to actually shift energy from one part of the country to another, for example. So how do we actually do it? We build at our client site wind and solar, and then we whack on a hydrogen production facility, which is a big electrolyzer like your chemistry class. And we use that green power to split water into hydrogen and oxygen, and we capture the hydrogen and we compress it and we store it, and then we burn that instead of natural gas at our client's site in boilers. We also help to decarbonise fleets, so we replace diesel in heavy goods vehicles with hydrogen in heavy goods vehicles, trucks, fuel cell electric vehicles. And I can cover that in more detail in any questions later. But there are some big barriers, and I think the two that I would highlight, we've already actually touched on. The first one is government support. Clearly it changes every day, but we need that supporting regulation from defining what is a low carbon hydrogen standard, which we're starting to do, all the way to support and financial mechanisms to actually catalyse the market. And it needs to be material. In the UK, we have really, really strong targets, but for the hydrogen business model recently, we dedicated £240 million to it. The US did 350 billion for the same problem. Europe, as well, has the Hydrogen Bank, which is a lot larger, and other support mechanisms. So the UK government actually needs to get a move on and help support this market. And the second one is building what I would call the ecosystem, what Ben was talking about. So that is building both the supply, which is what we do, but also the demand. And this is a big kind of education process for loads of different clients and customers and industries around the world. But we've got to work with a consortium approach. So we effectively work with potential off-takers, middlemen, whether it be haulage companies, whatever it is, to understand that demand. So a tiny bit about me. I am not an energy person naturally. I've got I think quite a few of us have unconventional routes. But I started off in the army. After university, I did 7 years in the British Army, had a brilliant time, and then I decided I needed to grow up. And I went to a big company called Basden Consulting Group, which is a strategy consulting firm, and I worked there for three years focusing on climate and sustainability. Again, not energy. But there are many parallels, and I could take those and apply them to Protium, where I am today. And today in my job as Chief of Staff, I head up our strategy, but I also help with the kind of growth and professionalisation of the business. So I help with market entry, fundraising, business planning, capability development, all quite interesting stuff. And I think, as everyone has touched on today, energy and the kind of the employment opportunity is fantastic. It's a high growth industry. My company is a high growth company. When I started 6 months ago, there were 40, we're now 60. It's very mission-led. If you want to be motivated by something, I think energy is a great place to be, or green energy in particular, if you want to have that positive impact on the environment. And there's all types of roles which we've covered. And that's anything from the technical as an engineer all the way up to commercial, strategic. So I think it's a young industry, it's full of challenge, and I would say get on board. And I guess that's why a lot of people are in this room. Thank you very much.
So thank you all for 6 very, very excellent 5-minute introductions. I'm very impressed. The things that struck me from that, first one is that there are a lot of clever people out there who really, really want to invest in this energy change. They really want to. They're looking for opportunities. They want to be involved in it. And that's going to create marvellous job opportunities. The second is that there are some really, really intelligent people out there who are actually capable of solving the problems that we're facing. And actually capable of doing it. If those two can come together, then actually we don't need to be as worried as some people might have us think, but we need to do it. I heard that there's actually enough land and there is enough money. The statistic about global GDP and how much we spent on COVID was a really telling one for me. Big issues around policy stability. So if there's anybody who works with government of whatever flavour in this room, please, that's a message to take away. And also issues with people and skills. Do we have the right people to be able to do, all these companies going from 60 people to 200 people? Well, we've got to find those 200 people, and are we producing the people who are capable of doing that, or can we grow them? I thought very interesting to hear about BP's strategy. Absolutely fascinating to realise how much has gone since I left the sustainability world in 2016. Just how different listening to an oil company is in that short space of time. And I, for one, buy into it. I'm sure there's still a lot of greenwash around in the world, but hearing that the big brewers are looking for how can we have hydrogen supporting our plants, all that just amazes me that change is taking place. And then my last one is is hearing about the Swiss Army knife and realising why it is that Swiss Army knife has not come out of my bedside drawer in 15 years. So thank you. I'm going to hand over to Caroline, who is going to announce the winner of the Funniest Speaker contest. She didn't know that before that point, and organise us for the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Were better at timekeeping than others. But no, I think that was really, really good. Thank you for your time, because we couldn't do these types of events without you. It was absolutely fascinating. So our 2023 business networking events are focused on the theme of technological innovation. So today we're looking at the impact of technology on the energy sector and the opportunities that stem from that. Later on this year, we plan to focus on fintech, financial technology. So if any of you are in the audience have any expertise in that area, then please come and chat to me afterwards, because we want to start curating our next event so we can do something similar along these lines. So just a reminder that tonight is actually first and foremost about inspiring our minds, but very much also about building network and connections. And we have a platform to help you continue these connections. Radley Connect is a little card on the desk. If you would sign up to that, if you're not already on there, everyone who signs up is asked to say how they're willing to help. So then you can see exactly how people are willing to help when you go on there and look at their profiles. And that's absolutely invaluable because it gives you a way of accessing the goodwill that's within the Radley network. So please do make sure that you get on there. We also have a WhatsApp group that some of you have already joined in to continue conversations, so please feel free to join that. There's a QR code on reception, so you can pick it up there. Don't forget to also connect with us on LinkedIn as well. So not only do we want to encourage all of you to network, we're lucky enough to have 16 boys who've travelled all the way from Radley tonight. Hello there, thanks for joining us tonight online. I'm sorry you couldn't be here today. You would have heard some great information from our speakers. We're now going to move to an open networking session, and we will be able to give you a flavour of that, but obviously there's nothing better than being here in person. So please do come and join us next time in person, but in the meantime, thanks for joining us on this online presentation tonight. Thank you very much.
If you curtail the renewable power, you have to balance the system. You've got to match supply and demand. So the only way to do that is to turn on gas peakers, typically in the north of England. And obviously, just like a plane taking off, most of the carbon is emitted when they fire them up. And so you're paying the offshore guys to turn off, and then you're paying the gas peakers to turn on. So a big negative carbon impact, a lot of cost. So just to give you an idea, it's going to go from about $1 billion last year to $4 billion in 3 years' time. And this is all due to the uptake of renewable power. So what we're trying to do is make this battery system.
So the electricity network, district network operators are operating assets across everybody's land. And over the generations, over the last 50 to 100 years, there's been a real change in mentality towards land ownership. It's expensive land. So those people, back in the day, post-war, everyone was very much supportive of supporting the national grid, of supporting the common goal of electricity and utilities. Now, it's incredibly difficult.
Those are the four kind of fundamental technologies that we're looking at. What we want is, what we look for are the technologies that we think might be transformative over the next 10 to 20 years. Technologies that might define the century. Yes.
Which of the four, if you had to pick one, do you believe is the most promising over the next? Do you genuinely think, obviously people have been saying it's 20 years away for 40, 60 years?
It's a matter of when. It's a matter of when.
Do you see it happening? As a timeline, what would you guess?
We're thinking 2030s, early 2040s.
Okay.
But when that happens, it's going to change absolutely everything, because what it means is limitless, free, safe energy. When you consider what a role energy has played in our history, in our geography, in our politics, and consider what it means to have free, limitless energy of a scale that you can put it into a ship, then I think that is world-changing and could define this century. Just like oil and gas defined the last century and coal defined the century before that. Fusion may well be the technology that defines the century. Amen. And I'm a big believer in fusion. Like I said, we've invested in several companies and we'd like to invest in a lot more. The UK is an absolute world leader in fusion technologies. But the US is...
Okay. Yeah, so there are, I'm going to get it wrong, something like 7 different types of hydrogen. Don't ask me what they all are, but the big 2 or big 3 you need to think about are grey hydrogen, which is made from the splitting of natural gas through a process called steam methane reforming, and it's dirty. Create a lot of CO2 from that. That's how we make hydrogen today, and that's what green hydrogen is trying to solve. Green hydrogen is the splitting of water into hydrogen and oxygen. You do that through passing a current through it called electrolysis. And the other one is blue hydrogen, which is the same as grey. It's splitting methane but instead of letting the CO2 go into the atmosphere, you capture the CO2 and you put it in underground storage, which is called CCUS, carbon capture underground storage. There's a few others, like which is pig, but I think the big three you need to focus on are Gray,